من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور. سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. راقيا بالعلم نحو النجم مزدان شكور، رافضا كل التدني رافضا نفس الغرور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. وعلي ثم بالدين معاذ لا يبور، اقرأوا التاريخ تروي عنه أفواه سطور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. فهو كالشمعة تذهب حتى تأتينا بنور، ساهر بالليل علم وبأوقات سحور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي والعصور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and welcome to Islamic Oasis Live. Today we have another amazing discussion that is going to take place. Many of you are obviously aware of what's happening in England, in UK. The Queen has passed away, and you know, obviously there's a lot of discussion taking place around her death. Unfortunately, even Muslims are talking about whether she's going to Jannah or not. That's I sometimes I don't even know what to say on such level of ignorance of some of the Muslims. But what we're going to talk about is the real issues. Where is UK headed? What will be what's the consequences of, I mean, does it really, her death, does it really have any real effect in this area or this region, or obviously their symbolic role in the country. And then we will talk about Europe in general. We'll talk about the decline of UK. Is there a decline? Is it possible to see UK actually divide Can it be divided? Are we seeing those signs on the horizon? The whole issue of Brexit that has taken place, the arms deals, the history of UK in colonization, we'll probably touch upon that. So inshallah, with all of that said, I would like to invite our brother Adnan Khan. You know who he is. He was here before, a writer, author, the analysis, a person who was deeply involved in doing analysis of and assessments of the Muslim world. He runs websites like Geopolitics.com, and they're writing magazines discussing affairs of the Ummah. All kinds of very serious discussions and topics are discussed, not only in his website but also in his writings. So, and he's in England, so what better person to bring in to discuss this, who is involved in who's seeing things on the ground, is also involved in the affairs of this Ummah, in trying to explain to this Ummah how we should be looking at these events. So brother Adnan, again, welcome to Islamic Oasis Live, Sheikhi.
It's good to be here.
Sheikh, a lot of things have happened since you were here last. We were just talking about Pakistan and what's happening. Of course, that area is still going through what is going through. And now we have the situation in England or UK where you have the Queen passes away. So what's the situation like there, Sheikh? What's the discussion? What's the talk on the streets? And what does it really matter, or does it really matter?
So yes, the UK now is in a period of mourning. Just for the record, we actually have a new Prime Minister currently as well, but the death of the Queen seems to be the main story. Just to take your minds back, Boris Johnson, who was the Prime Minister, he was removed by his own MPs because of a number of scandals. So the Conservative Party went for a process in the summer where they shrink a list down to 2 candidates, and these 2 candidates had the whole summer to canvass for votes. And just a week and a half ago, Liz Truss, she was the Foreign Minister. She won, defeating Rishi Sunak, who was the Finance Minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer. So in fact, one of the last things the Queen did before she passed away was to give her, royal blessing to the new Prime Minister. And then what we see is just soon after that, a couple of days actually, the Queen passed away. And really, you've seen, firstly, the government has given complete wall-to-wall coverage to the death of the Queen. Every channel, in fact, every foreign channel coming to UK, it's second-by-second coverage of what's going on. King Charles is now the king. The body of the Queen has gone from Scotland, it's come all the way down to London. I think for another 5 or 6 days, she is in what they call state, where you can see the body. On Monday, we have a national bank holiday, out of mourning as well. So the whole country, any voice that's anti-monarchy is being completely silenced. Anyone that didn't like the monarchy.
So I can't even say like I'm enjoying the holidays?
Well, what you got is the pressure. You can say that. It's the pressure of public opinion. So you've had cases, for example, people holding placards saying, we're against the monarchy, and they've been arrested under public order legislation. And in the UK, it's the even
Bangladesh is mourning. Even Bangladesh has declared 3 days of mourning, bro. What's going on with that?
They've given more days for the Queen than they do for Eid in that country. So, I mean, just to give you a bit of backdrop, the royal family, obviously, they don't play any practical role in the country. They don't rule, they don't govern. Those days are long gone. Really, the royal family plays a very symbolic role. They're a symbol of the nation. The Queen is technically the leader of the Commonwealth, of what remains of the nations Britain colonized. Mostly it's very small islands in the Caribbean, these sort of places. So for a lot of people who are 50 plus, they have this affinity towards the Queen, the royal family. Anyone who's younger than that, what they see is this very archaic medieval institution that has no role in the modern day. So the royal family was not elected. You never have elections. The royal family, they were born into the right family. So they hold this high position. And for a lot of people, this is all medieval practices. This has no place in the modern world. So in Europe, in most of the European countries, they've got rid of their royal families, some very violently. But what you find after World War II, the royal family became a useful symbol for the government, for people to rally around. So mostly the Queen would open Parliament every term. She would, go and cut ribbons. She'll be invited to represent the country. Prince Charles has played a very important role in trade for the UK, things like that. But the royal family have also had their own scandals. They've had multiple divorces. You got Prince Andrew, who was linked to the person in America starring. You've also had Princess Diana, who's more popular than the Queen. So they become like a whole Bollywood saga themselves. Queen Elizabeth herself, she is from an era where you pull up your sleeve, you do hard work, and there's a lot of elderly that resonates with them. So they saw the Queen through that lens. And obviously the Queen's gone now, so for a lot of people it's the end of an era. She's been the Queen since 1952, which is the significant period of time. However, the royal family, their challenge has been, how do you keep yourself relevant? You're a royal family, you're held in a certain position because of history, and many people don't look at things in this way. In the modern day, it's about merit, it's about elections, it's about being elected. Obviously, the royal family goes completely against that. But because the royal family don't have to make any difficult decisions, they don't need to make any policy that will upset people, they're generally seen in a positive light. The people who would prefer the royal family to go are people who just feel this is an outdated family, outdated institution.
No, I used to always wonder, man. Obviously you don't have like anything like that here. I mean, you have prominent families. You have the Clintons, the Bushes, and all that. But nothing like the royal family. But the public, let's say, the poor. Because these guys live very lavish lifestyles, man. You look at. Does that have effect on the public? Like, these guys do nothing. They're not part of the government. It's not like they're making policies. They're not. And then look at the lifestyles that these guys have. Do you ever see that amongst the like a discussion happening amongst the English?
So what people see is land that belongs to the royal family. They obviously have Buckingham Palace. They've got their castles of the modern day. Beyond that, you don't really see a lot of their business practices. They're not like your Bill Gates, these sort of guys, where you see their lavish lifestyles. They're not like that. In fact, they're pretty quiet, because the understanding is the royal family will not take a political position. Although they in theory. So the Queen, one of the things Queen Elizabeth is quite famous for is she's never publicly taken a political position. Even on the Iraq War, even though the whole country was against it, she remained quite neutral. But practically, they don't make the laws. They sign the laws off. But their biggest challenge is how do you keep yourself relevant in the modern age, especially in a region, in a continent where most royal families have disappeared. The rise of Europe to some degree goes back to the French Revolution in 1780, and the royal family was violently overthrown then. So what the royal families had to do is, over the years, adapt. You now have an American half-caste princess, Meghan Markle, which
how's that going?
has its own share of controversy.
It doesn't seem to be going
well. No, so what you had effectively is Queen Elizabeth. She worked to keep the royal family relevant, and she kept Prince Charles in check. She kept all her kids in check, but there's nothing she can do about the grandchildren. Especially Prince Harry, he doesn't have a lot of the values they have. So the royal family is very white, very English. You see Prince Harry, he's not like that. So it wasn't surprising once they got married, he sort of like given up his royal title. And especially the interview Meghan Markle gave to Oprah Winfrey, very revealing of how royal family view, non-white people. This is the family that sat at the top of Britain's empire. They were the ones that supported and justified Britain's colonial empire. So that's why for a lot of people, when they see the royal family, they see the past and they see everything that's not good about the UK. People who are on the right, your middle class, your conservatives, they see the royal family as a good symbol for the UK. They feel they need the royal family. And with Queen Elizabeth gone now, the credibility and respect of Prince Charles and these sort of family members is not the same as Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth is from a bygone era. Prince Charles, very difficult relationship with the media, very difficult relationship with any woman, very difficult relationship with his children. So, you know, the Queen Elizabeth always had quite a high public opinion about herself, even better than prime ministers. The rest of the family is very, the public opinion has always been very, very low. So I think really in the long run, the royal family is going to struggle to keep themselves relevant. Already there is significant public opinion against, you know, becoming a republic. And that's mainly amongst, you know, people who are younger, up to about 40 years old. And with Queen Elizabeth gone now, I think that will probably go further. Obviously, the royal family are the royal family for the whole of the UK. And, you know, Scotland, since Brexit, they are actively pushing, they want another referendum to separate from the UK. You've got the Northern Ireland, they want to separate as well. So you've got the royal family, who are the Royal Family United Kingdom, and question marks. Will there be a United Kingdom going forward?
I guess we're moving into a different, another topic here. So, like you were saying, I guess the death of the Queen, it's a new era now. And with this new era, does this mean now there'll be a new Britain also? Britain will not look the way it looks like today in the next, let's say, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years?
So Britain was already heading in this direction even before the death of the royal family. The influence Britain has, the question marks of the future of Britain, they've been there, to be honest with you, for quite a while, and really they've accelerated now. So the royal family, which is a very useful symbol to unite the public over, that whatever our differences are, at least we've had one consistent queen. With her gone now, really that as a glue to unite people, that's gone now. But I would even question how much were people, the fact that the Scots want to separate shows you that the royal family can't hold it together. And there's deep issues here. You know, Scotland, Ireland, these go back historical, they're economic, they're political. You know, the royal family isn't political. So how are they going to resolve these things? So things like Brexit, things like Britain, I mean, just this week now, India has apparently overtaken Britain to become the 5th largest economy in the world. So this is the country that Britain effectively raped to become a global power. This is the country that funded Britain's industrial revolution. It's taken them all that time. So there are serious question marks about Britain's role in the world. And what it fundamentally comes down to is Britain's political ambition is sky high, but the economic and military capabilities are nowhere as close. So that's why Britain is all about symbols.
So let's talk about, I guess that's part of decline there. I mean, so it's just that they cannot, I guess the deconstruction, let's say the colonial, you know, they obviously there was US in the game and other powers that came in the game. The UK was not playing the same role, but is that what affected what UK can do today? I mean, as far as their budgets when it comes to military or their political influence in the world, or their economy at least. It may have the political ambitions, but you said, look, economy is not there, neither the military. But what? It doesn't have the budgets. It's not capable of building a military the way others are.
So Britain, it lacks the resources to fund and support a global empire. So keep in mind that most of Britain's empire was built upon leeching of its colonies.
Yeah.
And Britain's plan was, after 1945, when World War II finished, it was going to use the colonies again to industrialize itself. But the difference then is America and the Soviet Union were both against this because they saw that this is what makes the European nations very powerful. So America effectively established the United Nations and began this whole idea of decolonization. The colonies should become independent. And the Soviet Union was also spreading communism, and their view was people should become independent. You need revolutions. And Britain, I mean, effectively, the two world wars had consumed Britain to such a point that it ceased to be the power. So that's why after World War II, Britain was no longer the power. It was really America. Yes, Britain had created most of the architecture in the world. So if you look at the Middle East, all the royal families that are still there today, Britain created them. So that's what Britain has tried to do since then, is utilize these relationships to keep itself in the game. And I would say, look, England's done a good job. The UK's done a very good job of staying in the game. But the problem with staying in this game of global politics is when you're just trying to stay in the game, you can't actually impact the global power that much. So Britain tried to complicate America's Iraq invasion, but it couldn't stop it. Britain couldn't stop America going to Afghanistan, so it went alongside it. So really, in the end, how much power do you have? So today, just to give you a simple example, around 50% of Britain's economy just before World War II was industrial based. So we're talking metals, we're talking ships, we're talking coal, all the key things for industry. Today, less than 10% of the economy is based on industry. And the number one industry in the UK is food.
Yes, Alan.
So that's not exactly going to turn you into a global superpower, is it?
So
Right?
that makes
And
sense. Everywhere you go, even the colonies today, the only thing they can produce is good food. That's the only thing that you see in Turkey. Anywhere you go, these guys are known for tourism or food. So I guess that's one of the symbols. So can you, it's a joke, but is it, I mean, can one of the symbols of decline be that you have good food and nothing else?
well, if that becomes your main industry, yeah, then, at the end of the day, when industry stimulates your economy, that means you can produce industrial goods, you can produce ships, you can produce heavy metals, you can produce heavy industries. If your economy, I mean, the UK economy today is 80% services, and the biggest industry in services is finance. Yeah. So they've completely shifted the other way. Look at China. China, I think 40-50% of its economy is industry. Right? So this the whole
40,
composition.
50% is industry, you said.
Industry, yeah. I mean, okay, they produce like most of the world's goods that everybody consumes. But when Britain was an empire, she was, I think, up to 50% of global trade. America at its peak was, the trade partner of most of the countries in the world. So really, after World War II, what Britain's done is it had to shrink its military. They couldn't afford it. So today, for example, Iran's Revolutionary Guards is larger than Britain's standing army.
Huh, interesting. Very interesting.
Right. So what Britain does now is we join coalitions when we go abroad. We don't go it alone. So if you look at Libya, you look at Syria, you look at Iraq, Afghanistan, Britain wasn't there on its own. It was there with other coalition partners. Britain doesn't go anywhere on its own. Its general budget, yeah, they have to prioritize now. So a simple example I give you, there's a big debate in the UK that Britain should give up its nuclear weapons because they can't afford it. But the elites in the country, nobody gives up their nuclear weapons. You give up your nuclear weapons, you are clearly not a power. But Britain can't afford it. And interestingly, Britain leases the missiles from America. They're not even its own missiles, right? So the Trident missiles they've got, they need to upgrade them, and it's going to cost 100 billion. Now that's 100 billion Britain doesn't really have, or it doesn't have for its nuclear weapons. So this is the challenge they've got. You've got the demands of your people.
With this, so how do they stay in the game? I mean, you're talking about, this kind of shows that even, you're talking about a country that really is, what keeps them in the game? I mean, you're saying that, okay, look, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, it's more than the standing army of UK, which means UK is not going to war anytime soon. No. So that's done, and then so what has kept them in the game? Just political shrewdness, or what?
So yeah, what's kept them in the game is they talk a good game because they sound as though they're talking a good game. People take them seriously. Now, you got America, you got Russia, you got China, you got France, you got Germany. If you don't give Britain a seat at the table, they can cause some issues for you. So for them, it's better you keep Britain at the table because at least you can see what she's doing. That keeps Britain in the game. But Britain created Palestine. Britain created the problem we have in Palestine today. But today, America, Israel is a key ally. Well, it's very close to America rather than America for security, not Britain. If you look at most of the problems in the world, even the border between Pakistan and India, it was a British creation.
Yeah.
But both countries are close to America now, not Britain. So what Britain is doing is it's talking a good game, it's punching above its weight, it's going to all the international conferences. Physically, though, it can't counter what America's doing, it can't counter what Russia's doing. And so what it tries to do when it comes to Russia, it works with America because America obviously sees Russia as a competitor. On China, Britain's got a very interesting policy. It sides with America against China, but then it opens its financial industry and its country to Chinese money. So they're in effect playing both sides. Now, economically, militarily, they can't shape the world. But what they do is they just make sure they play a role in the world. So in some ways, they're like the irritating younger brother. You have to take him with you, he's your brother. But he doesn't really contribute, he doesn't really help, and he doesn't put any input. But he's your brother at the end of the day, you've got to take him with you.
So Sheikh, I mean, this is very interesting. Wow, I mean, really, it's even changed my view of what Britain really is, because the way Britain is portrayed, I guess, in the news, in the world politics, is that you can't do it without Britain being on your side. But Sheikh, you're talking about, let's say, for instance, now this whole issue that happened with Brexit. So what was the real issue, and why did they had to get out of this? I mean, was it not helping them? I mean, you're saying if they were suffering economically, if you had an open door policy, that would actually help them.
Yeah, so being part of the European Union has always divided the country, the politicians, and even the elites in the UK. The problem is when you join the European Union, you are in a union of 28, 29 countries, and not all trade deals go in your favor, not all political positions go in your favor. So initially, Britain, after World War II, they watched to see if Europe would unite. When they could see Europe would unite in this union, they realized you can't do anything from the outside, you've got to be on the inside. And as the years and decades have gone by, the feeling amongst the politicians and the elites are Britain's having to give up too much to Brussels, to the European Union. So many laws, for example, are made in the European Union that are enforced upon Britain. And there was a feeling this is now sovereignty, our sovereignty is at stake. So Margaret Thatcher was the one who really took quite a dogged position against the European Union. And really from then onwards, Britain didn't join the single currency. Britain got an exemption from joining some of the more, the other treaties where there was going to be more integration. And the opinion within the Conservative Party was becoming even more problematic over the European Union. So David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister 2009, this became such a problem that he said that if I win the next election, we will have a referendum on in or out on the EU. And at that time, he was in a coalition government. Nobody believed the Tories would win the next election. They did, and then it went to the public. Now, also, Britain has a very large and a very old financial sector. And the EU was encroaching more and more with regulation on the financial sector. And this is where many in the financial sector started funding Tory MPs who were anti-EU. And it was these MPs who drove through Brexit in the end. Obviously, the whole Brexit campaign, a lot of it was built upon prejudices that already existed. So the three key arguments for Brexit, leave the EU, were, we need to take back control. So being in the EU, we don't have control. The second one is that Britain is apparently spending about £300 million a week as a cost of being in the EU. That's money that could be used for the health service. I mean, that's a complete lie, right? But because people were prejudiced, they believed it. And the third argument, which they never got to, was Turkey will join the EU one day. Yeah, but the first two arguments were so good, that was enough. So a lot of people had a lot of prejudices. And in the UK, immigration in the EU has been used for a long time to deflect government failure. Any problem in the UK historically, the blame's gone on immigrants, it's gone on Muslims, it's gone on the EU, all of these sort of things. So they've left the EU, and the utopia that was promised hasn't happened. In fact, we've had some really funny things happen. We've had, for example, there were supply chain problems because the drivers of the trucks were all from the EU, and now they've got come into UK.
Yeah, yeah.
This happened straight away. Exports now to also, there was the added problem of the Republic of Ireland, which is different to Northern Ireland. That's still part of the EU. So where will the border be? That hasn't even been resolved yet.
Okay, but they still consider themselves Britain.
Yeah,
British.
because Britain is a unitary. So the Republic of Ireland, although it's part of the United Kingdom, it operates as a separate country. So they're still part of the European Union.
But
Right.
does that
So-
does that affect even the security, Sheikh? Security of the country? I mean, you have a country that's saying that.
So
yeah,
all of
separate,
these
but-
things, so a lot of these things have been kicked down the road. They've not been resolved yet. And then add to that, Scotland saying, because we've left the European Union now, we will have another referendum on Scotland leaving the United Kingdom, and it was to go back to European Union. And I would say in the long run, Scotland will separate, because their main problem is London and Westminster. That is the core of the United Kingdom. The politicians in London, they don't care about Ireland, they don't care about Scotland. So we Scots need to go independent and take care of ourselves. So they had a referendum 2016, and the Remainers, they won. And a lot of that was because people weren't confident, how will Scotland economically survive? But now that the UK has left the EU, they're now saying that we now have the material circumstances have changed. So we want to have a referendum, and the Scottish Independent Party who's leading this, they constantly win majorities, which means the public want to have a referendum on the issue.
So, which means they want a separation. So now, tell me, Sheikh. For instance, the U.S. policy was they didn't never wanted to see a united Europe.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that was one thing that I remember. I mean, till today, we always see that. So, could someone say that? Well, actually, UK kind of played with, got played by U.S. policy that you keep Europe divided, and then this whole issue of Ukraine happens, and Ukraine kind of, the pressure that's on Europe in general with this war going on. What are we seeing here? I mean, influence of Russia in Europe, or influence of US in Europe, and then so can you? I don't know. Navigate us through this. I mean, what are you looking at when you're looking at Europe right now, and with this war going on?
Right. So, firstly, what's taking place in Europe is just a continuation of what's happened historically. What we're seeing is just a modern version of a centuries-old battle over the continent. So, firstly, if we look at Europe and Russia, that border between Russia and Europe, it has shifted over the centuries. So 30 years ago, that border went all the way to Germany. Yeah, Germany, all of that was under the Soviet Union. Then in 1991, Soviet Union collapsed, and the border went all the way to Ukraine. So Ukraine's north is only 300 miles from Moscow. So that border...
I forgot about that. So Russia has already played a huge role in Europe, at least Eastern Europe.
Yeah. So we view Russia as a European nation. Most of its population is in European Russia. Although, yes, Russia goes from Europe all the way to the Pacific. No one looks at Russia as a Pacific nation. So think about Napoleon, Hitler, all invaded Russia and got to Moscow.
Yeah.
So as far as Europeans are concerned, Moscow is a Russian city. It's a European city, sorry. That's how they view it. So in order to defend Moscow, Russia's always expanded its buffer regions. So that brings them closer to Europe. The Europeans, looking at Ukraine, looking at the Caucasus, they see lots of energy, they see lots of manpower, and they couldn't help themselves expanding and invading. So after 1991, rather than sending the armies, the Europeans sent the European Union. One by one, all these former Soviet republics became EU nations, they became NATO nations. So this is the centuries-old battle which is still playing out. The way America looked at this, and a good example of the Cold War. As far as America's concerned, we've got two oceans around the American heartland. So there's no chance the enemy is going to attack us. However, the rise of any nation into a continental power could challenge America. So when they looked at Europe, you got the Germans, you got the French, you got the British, you had the Dutch, and you got the Russians. So if any of these were able to consolidate and conquer Europe, they would then become a continental power and they could challenge America. And that's why you find when Germany tried to conquer Europe, America intervened in World War One. When Germany and Japan tried to become continental powers in World War II, America intervened. When the Soviet Union tried to take over the whole of Eurasia, America supported European nations, you know, a ring of nations from Norway down to Turkey, all the way to Japan. So as far as America is concerned, it doesn't want Europe to get run over by Russia. On the other hand, it's useful for Russia to be a threat to Europe because most European countries for security would then run to America. So both, you know, the position of Russia being a power, it suits America. America doesn't want any European country to dominate the continent because if it does, it will become a continental power. So even the European Union, America actually supported it at the beginning because Europe was devastated. And how are they going to stand up to the Soviet Union? Soviet Union was a power after World War II. So that's why America supported anything where you combine your industries and you stand up. Obviously, the EU now has become a coherent entity. So the invasion of, so Putin made it very clear since the 90s that the expansion of Europe via EU and NATO all the way to Russia's border, this is an existential threat for us, and this is bang out of order, and we're going to respond. So enough was enough. He invaded Ukraine. So what's happening in Ukraine is part of a centuries-old battle, really. So you're seeing the West, they support the Ukrainians with arms, with sanctions against Russia. This week, you've seen quite a big breakthrough in the north of Ukraine, a lot of intelligence provided by America.
Yeah,
8,000
square
at the
miles,
moment,
something like this has been freed by.
yeah. So Russia's and there's a question mark. Did you have to militarily invade? You've got other tools at your disposal. You've got gas, you've got political influence, you've got resources that are linked into Ukraine. So you know, Russia could have created a big problem for itself. Did it really need to do this? But obviously, they've been talking about Ukraine for a long time. You know, Ukraine. Parts of Ukraine are ethnically Russian, and there was even talk of Ukraine starting the process for them to join the EU. So think about that. The EU would be all the way to Russia's border. So that's really the background. So, you know, Russia and Europe have always been at each other. That's a centuries-old battle. And as far as America is concerned, it's got to make sure no one of these nations actually becomes the dominant power because you'll be a threat to America. America's obviously got another threat in the Far East with China, so it's got to deal with that as well. And this sanctions they put on Russia, Russia's hitting back. Russia's turned off the gas to a lot of European countries. We're going into the winter now.
Yeah, I
and
was
there's
going
serious
to ask,
question marks.
will the effects be different? Let me ask you though, in your assessment, did they think that this war would go on as long as it has with Ukraine? Did they plan this, you think? Well, in a way to maybe, let's say, control Europe and also at the same time control Russia? What do you think? I mean, now you got winter coming up, gas is going to be needed. I think there's already a crisis going on in Germany that, from what I hear. I don't know how the situation is in Britain as far as gas prices and heating and all of that. So what happens, Sheikh? Now, can Europe get involved in a war?
So at the moment, for the moment, Europe is not directly at war. They are supplying arms, intelligence, material. They're taking in the Ukrainian people. So indirectly, they're fighting Russia. So the Ukrainians are doing the fighting, and everyone. So the supply chain to Ukraine goes through Europe all the way to America. Now, it's possible it can escalate. I mean, this is the continent where you've had world wars in the past, but an escalation doesn't really suit anybody. It would mean now Russia's fighting NATO, and NATO is much more advanced than Russia. It also means the continent will get devastated. Remember, 60 million people, nearly the population of the UK, died in World War II. So, you know, 60 million, and then 30 million died in World War I. So, you know, there's many people alive in Europe today who fought in those wars. So, they know what it's actually like. Now, Russia hasn't shown any ambition to go beyond Ukraine. Its view is Ukraine we see as existential and there's no negotiation. It hasn't shown any interest to go further than Ukraine, go into Poland, for example, right? And remember, Russia's got its own internal issues as well. However, Europe relies on Russian energy. The volume of gas Russia sends into Europe, no one else can replace that. So in less than 6 months, they've tried to reduce the dependency on Russian energy. Countries like Germany, the industrial heart of Europe, they get about 40 to 50% of their gas from Russia. And Russia keeps every week, it keeps closing its oil pipeline, saying we're doing repairs, and now they've admitted that the sanctions you put on us, until they're not more removed, we're not going to increase oil production and gas production. And now we're going to winter. So if you look at Germany in the north, Italy in the south, they get nearly half of their energy from Russia. And as you go closer to Russia, those countries get nearly 80 to 100% of their energy from Russia. If you go further away, like Britain only gets about 5% of its energy from Russia.
But it's surrounded by water, it's able to...
So historically, Britain had its own energy resources. They had gas in the North Sea. And also for logistics and infrastructure, it's cheaper and closer to get gas from Norway, to get it from North Africa, these sort of places. In fact, North Africa for a long time has been the solution to European energy dependency on Russia. Their view was countries like Algeria, Libya, Nigeria, we're going to shift towards them in order to reduce our dependency on Russia, because Russia uses energy politically. It's constantly turned off gas to countries when they weren't politically on the same page.
Man,
However,
that tells me that if Muslims were to get their act together, you could choke all of Europe, period.
I mean, Britain, for example, it
Especially
imports
Britain.
a vast amount of its energy. I mean, it gets energy from Qatar, it gets energy from Central Asia, all this comes via ships. I mean, it's a massive dependency. I mean, Britain's moved more and more towards renewable energy now. But you can't run a whole industrial economy on renewable energy.
You need hardcore...
So Germany's got the biggest problem, because what Germany did after World War II was they outsourced security to America, and then effectively they outsourced energy to Russia. And this freeway marriage worked. Today they're going to have to make a choice, because America's now saying you got to stop buying energy from Russia. We're putting sanctions on the country that buy any Russian energy, and then America is your security guard. I mean, Germany doesn't have a great army; it's never invested in it. Germany doesn't have nuclear weapons because it's outsourced that to America. So now they've announced that they're going to rearm again, And if anyone knows European history, when Germany rearms, it usually ends up with a war somewhere. That's what usually happens.
That's what. So is that also a concern that if, let's say, to be able to at least have some type of control in Europe, you need Germany. I mean, Germany. So can Germany go rogue? I don't know. Is that a possibility with this whole situation going the way it is?
It's possible. I mean, it's interesting. We just recorded a podcast with our German author for our website, and he was saying that Germany's tried to play the pragmatic card. Let's work with Russia where we can. Let's work with America where we can. But the problem now is Russia's constantly switching off energy, and America's getting you to put sanctions on Russia. So you're going to have to make a choice. But the problem is half of the German economy is based on exports, industrial exports. Industrial exports need energy. And Germany imports 99% of oil, 99% of gas. So this is why historically they've tried to invade Ukraine, Russia, and the Caucasus to take those energy resources. That's what happened in World War I and World War II. That's always been the agenda, that we'll take those energy resources. So it's always possible. And Europe has a history of continent-wide wars, which turn into world wars. For the moment, though, Germany is storing energy. Germany's rethinking now to kickstart its nuclear reactors again. In Germany, the Greens have always been part of the coalition government, so they pushed the phasing out of nuclear energy, nuclear reactors, which Germany completely closed down. Now they're reopening them again.
I mean,
which is shocking. An industrial economy, and you shut down all your nuclear reactors.
they just can't afford it.
No, because the Green Party has always been part of the coalition government.
So
and
let's
they
be green,
we need to
organic,
shift
all of
to
that.
renewable energy. Yeah.
Renewable energy, yeah.
But this is, I mean, how do you run an industrial economy on renewable energy? You don't.
So let me ask you,
You
Sheikh,
need like
you know,
large volume.
This whole even, I mean, we're going to go into different subject, but I guess, so is Europe declining as a whole? I mean, because now,
Yes, I would say.
I guess the infrastructure is, they can't keep it intact because they need, hardcore industry, of course, and at the same time, then you have internal issues where parties like Green Party or whoever, and others who want renewable energy, things like that. So I can imagine them saying, okay, we need to produce more and more renewable energy so that they cannot be as much dependent on countries like Russia and others. But at the same time, if you do that, then you cannot continue on being industrial power.
So what you've got with Europe is, you obviously got France, you got Britain, you got Germany. These are the key powers. Now, each of these countries are not what they used to be after World War II. The French and the British, they've been in decline, although politically they get involved in the world. Germany's foreign policy for long has been very economic driven. You don't see Germany, producing political plans and political strategies, for example. It's at the table, but it's very economic driven. And with the rise of China and with manufacturing being in the Far East, it would seem that global power is shifting from the West over to the East. If you take China, if you take Taiwan, if you take South Korea, if you take these countries,
Singapore,
this is where most of the
Malaysia,
manufacturing
Indonesia.
hub, this is where the populations of the world are. So yes, Europe has led the world for 500 years. It's where the Enlightenment came from. It shifted to the North American area after World War II. However, with the rise of countries like China, especially, and countries around it, global power is shifting over there. Even I would say, Russia, France, and Britain, they're going to get overtaken by India. You've got Turkey. You got, in the long term, you've got countries like Mexico. Why is China or India not on the UN National Assembly? Why are France and Britain on there? These countries are big. I mean, Germany doesn't even have a seat at the Security Council. So there's a lot of these issues, and even, it's probably another show, there's even a debate about America's role in the future.
Hold on, so you're saying that now that means that even there will be a new shift within the UN, I guess UN Security Council itself. So you may not see France or Britain or Germany.
Because the permanent security members are effectively the victors from World War II.
Right.
In fact, the global order we have was established by the victors of World War II and mainly America.
So what does it look like? I mean, US, China, who will be on the seat? India?
Well, America has pushed for a while, Germany and India should get a seat. Right?
So it will expand, or it will be your expansion of your Security Council?
Yeah. Okay. Now, obviously, if you expand it, then you've got more countries you've got to take account of. So this is a problem for Britain and things. But for China, there's a bigger issue. China sees the UN, the IMF and the World Bank, NATO. These were institutes America set up to consolidate its position. Right. And China at that time was weak, and it didn't get a say on these international organizations. So you find China partakes in these organizations, but it doesn't commit to them. It doesn't really the values they're based upon. So, for example, China has no problem being part of the World Trade Organization, but China's saying, don't hold us to account on free trade and free markets. We don't believe in that sort of stuff.
And they have the Shanghai Corporation.
And actually, there's a question mark. There's a question mark. The values that these institutions are built upon, how much do people even believe in them now? And how useful have they been for the world? It's helped the West. It's helped them consolidate their position around the world. But now you've got a new player on the scene. So Europe obviously was the epicenter of the world for 500 years. That's changing. It's completely changing. And it's going to be funny when you've got the former colonies, of Turkey, India, China, well, Hong Kong, China were colonies of Europe. All of these are replacing these countries now. And unless some right-wing party comes to power, rearms in the UK, I can't see how Britain's going to change its economic
But let me
capability
ask
and
you
military
this, Sheikh.
situation.
I mean, a lot of times when we talk about growth of countries, or let's say, visionary countries, so are we're not seeing a shift in capitalism, are we? We're just seeing shift in okay, I guess the power shift is happening. That's it, not ideological shift.
Yeah. So what you've got is you've got a Premier League of nations, and yes, most of the Premier League nations are capitalist nations, and you can get changes in the global balance of power. That can happen. At the moment, there's no Cold War type struggle where two ideologies are competing for the world. You had the Soviet Union with communism, America with capitalism. Both of them believe their systems are the best for the world, and they're competing for everyone's support. That is not the struggle we're seeing at the moment. What we're seeing is China would like to replace America. Russia would like to replace America, but America, the nation, not the systems. Because these countries have no systems of their own. I mean, China has no alternative system. It only has Chinese culture. Russia is nationalist. It's about Mother Russia. It's not even ideological anymore. So what you find is, yes, everyone wants to trade with China. Britain loves Russian money coming into the UK. But in terms of culture and values, there's absolutely nothing from this country.
Let me just
China has...
with that question, right? So now you're saying Russia is not an ideological country anymore. It's more of pragmatic. So most of the countries that you are looking at, other than let's say US and China, are pragmatic countries that are just running their affairs on this. Whatever kind of takes care of my interest. But
yeah. So obviously, Britain and France, for example, they're capitalist domestically. They implement, democracy,
right.
freedom. Yeah. On their foreign policy, they do have a capitalist outlook.
Right.
However, they just lack the military economic capabilities to achieve anything more.
Okay. And what would you say about China?
America
China
still
has
says,
one-party system.
Yeah.
On
So
the other hand,
if you look at America, when they look at China, they say it's a battle between democracy versus autocracy. Yeah. That's really funny when they frame it like that, because as far as I can see, Donald Trump was probably more autocratic than Xi Jinping of China is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, take away the Chinese Communist Party, would China be where it is today without them? Because the Chinese Communist Party, being one party, no political party in the country, they literally dragged the country from poverty 3 decades ago and turned it into a global industrial monster.
But Sheikh, can that in a capitalist country, I guess, because of so many interests that go on within a capitalist country, can China, and I know we're not discussing China, but that would be another subject we need to discuss, but can China continue on with a one-party system and still be where it is today, or it needs, or that is where the whole world is going towards, let's say, a one-party system?
No. So the one-party system is unique to China, and they've achieved spectacular results with it.
Oh yeah, of course.
Firstly, the Chinese Communist Party is not viewed as a normal political party. The Chinese view it as a civilizational party. They see the Chinese Communist Party is who saved us during the Japanese occupation. The Chinese Communist Party ended the century of humiliation we went through. And that's why they're viewed as a civilizational party. And, the Chinese Communist Party, it is the state, it's the political party, it's the government, and its fingers go all the way into organized parts of its society. And that's why they've been able to get things done. That's why they've been able to build dams and mega cities, things like that. Yeah. So take the Chinese Communist Party out, you wouldn't get China where it is today. So it's debatable, as much as success the West have had, no one's developed as rapidly as China. Right? And some of this is the Chinese believe, we're great people, we have a long civilization. As far as they're concerned, we were a global power, and then the Europeans turned up and we fell behind technologically, industrially, and then we went through a century of humiliation, and now they are getting back to where they believe they've always been. So they see the last 100 years as a blip on their long record.
Let me ask you this, Sheikh. Now, let's say if Europe, obviously, okay, so Britain or UK is in decline. It could fall apart, it could divide, it could be, in pieces. then you have a whole situation, Ukraine situation, Russia situation in Europe. It's affecting its industry. It's affecting. Could it be possible that you have Europe actually becoming kind of, proxy war area for China and US? Is that possible or no? That's not in the.
That's possible in the long run. See, the way that's going to happen is if China politically gets involved in Europe. China
economically, it's already there, right? Economically, it
Yeah,
is the
economically
largest
is there.
market for China.
Yeah, economically is there. It's investing. But what you find with China, everywhere it puts money, there's very little political influence. There's very little political activity from China. Even in Africa, where China has put in loads of money,
Yeah.
France, Britain, and America are still fighting out in most countries amongst each other.
Yeah.
Because
Mali
China's
in the
priority
north,
has
yeah.
been, we got 1 billion plus people in our country. If we don't develop the economy, if we don't get the world's raw materials, there's not going to be jobs for people. So China's foreign policy is very economic driven, but this economic development now makes them reliant upon foreign energy, foreign raw materials. So that now means you need to develop your military and you need to play some role in the world. But if you take the world's key issues, take Palestine, two-state solution, take the Ukraine war, what is the Chinese position?
There's
Is China trying to sort these issues? There's nothing. And China, it's not that sort of power. It doesn't politically get involved. America, if there's an unhappy minority in your country, they will use that to interfere in your country and then eventually separate your country. Because America has political ambitions. It wants to shape the world. China has some vision for the world, but it's just an aspiration. It doesn't go. It's not doing the practical actions to achieve it.
But tell me, so why is US so concerned about? Again, we're talking US and
About
China, but why is US so concerned about Chinese growth? I mean, if it sees that, look, China does not have any ambitions to reshape the world, but obviously US is playing that role. So, what is the concern that it may? How can China?
Look at if you're sitting in Washington and you're looking at, okay, what are our major threats next 10, 20, 30 years, right? In the long run, okay, which nation or region seems to be getting powerful, who can bring together significant resources and potentially challenge America's position? And the only country that's on the up has been China.
No, but you're saying
Now,
it doesn't have those type of ambitions. Maybe economically, that's what you're saying.
No.
But
So
then you're
in
saying
America,
go ahead.
in America, you've got two positions. You've got the right-wing neocon position, which is if we don't deal with China today, it will be too
I see.
powerful 30 years down the
I
line.
see. So it may force.
Then
it into
you've
a war.
got the you could say the view of corporate America, yeah, which is the president of America, whoever he or she is, you need to make trade deals with China, and we want you to open up the Chinese economy so we can trade and get economic benefits. So Apple, all these big companies, they're not happy with the trade war with China, just impacting their trade. But the neocons, their view is, we, America, are the dominant power in every region of the world. In one region, the Far East, we are being challenged by a country. Now, you could argue, so what if America loses one region in the world? But losing one region in the world is a reduction in American power. It will make other nations in other regions more confident. So the way America sees it is any nation that becomes a continental power, it can potentially challenge America. So China, as far as they can see, is on the trajectory of becoming a continental power in the future. So for the moment, they're dealing with China through trade, through forums. They haven't gone to war yet. If everything fails, then war is your next option. So they're using all the political tools at the moment.
So you're saying that they get China involved in a situation where it's forced in a war to weaken it, whether it's due to Taiwan, whether
So if you look at what they're doing with Taiwan, it's just pure incitement.
Yeah.
If you look at what Pelosi did, she went over.
Yeah.
Absolutely no need for it. They are inciting them, which is what they did to Putin. They said, "We dare you." Putin, from the end of last year, was moving his troops, and they were like, "No, he's not going to invade. Yes, he will. We've got intelligence he's going to invade." They were inciting him, right? And now Russia's got a big, many of the soldiers that invaded the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, they took their parade uniforms with them. Russia's plan was Kiev would fall and we're going to do a parade the day after. So the soldiers took their parade uniforms with them. So when they failed to conquer Kiev, they left all their equipment and their clothes and they left Kiev. And that's how they found all these parade costumes. So Russia, is got involved in a war. And remember, as far as the Russian people are concerned, this ain't even a war, it's a special military operation. So Putin can't just call it a day and go back, it's going to affect his reputation. So this is the problem. So even if you look at China, things have been going good for 40 years. You've got a good economy, your economy is growing. I was born in 1979. In that year, China used to ration bicycles and fans. That's how poor it was. 90% of the population was in poverty. Yeah, not today. Now, a war, you could reverse all of that in 2 weeks. So the decision Chinese leaders have to make here is war worth it, or is your economic development what you should do? That's the challenge they've got. And America's inciting them. America's working with Japan. It's working with India. It's working with Australia. It's encircling them.
Sheikh, I was going to ask you more about India, but again, we're going away from the topic itself. But although these are all related in many ways, because you're talking about Chinese, influence in Europe, American influence in Europe, what could happen if both clash in Europe, and then Southeast Asia, you're talking about Russia. I mean, these are old allies at the same time. They're, so there's a lot going on. So, well, just to go back to Britain, because it's been over an hour, but so now what does, I guess they have a new appointment, I guess new PM is in town. What would be the, what goals, and what are the main objectives that she would, or he would, I think, what's the name of the person again? I didn't even know.
Liz Truss, yes, a she.
Yeah, she.
Liz Truss.
What's her, so what would be like top 10 things or the top 5 things that they would have to do to keep Britain in game?
Okay. So their main challenge for the moment is domestic. You've got major economic issues in the UK. You've got 10% of the population who hold half of the wealth. You've got wealth distribution issues. We've got a cost of living crisis coming up. We've got an energy crisis coming up as well, so she's got to deal with that. Globally, Liz Truss has already put her position out. She was very for the war in Ukraine. She's for supporting the Ukrainians. So effectively, she wants to maintain a special relationship with America. In fact, that's the general view of the elites in the UK, that it's better we work with America, we side with her in global issues, rather than go it alone, because she doesn't have the capability to go it alone, yeah? But Britain's challenges for the moment are mainly domestic, because of Brexit, because of the cost of living crisis, these sort of things. They're her main issues at the moment. Whatever America does, Britain, the rulers will generally go along with her. That doesn't necessarily mean they are supporting America, because Britain does have a history of going with America and complicating America's wars.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what we're seeing in Yemen and Libya and these places.
Yeah. So the main challenge for any British ruler at the moment is domestic, because how are you going to compete globally when you've got so many issues at home, which divide the country, which divide your resources, divide your politicians? And I don't think America's that far as well. The divisions in America, at some point, they're going to catch up with America's global position.
That's what I was going to ask you, Sheikh. So, I mean, would you, if you were going to write, what are the signs on the wall for a country to fall apart or decline? One of them would be that too many internal, so there's so many internal issues that you don't have time, or you cannot concentrate on foreign affairs. But
yeah, that is a good example. So the day America has to prioritize domestic issues over global, that would now mean your internal issues have got to such a, and I don't think America's that far. If you look at the national debt,
but see, then what happens to the world, Sheikh? And if you have China that doesn't want to, actually does not have that kind of ambitions to, let's say, reshape the world, then the US if it falls apart because of internal issues, that would be the main issue. That if anything happens, it would
Yeah,
be-
so what would happen is the architecture America set up globally of NATO, IMF, World Bank, these basically would no longer work. So these are tools America uses to keep a grip on the world.
Right.
That would become. The more important thing for us here is there's many agent rulers in the world who rely on America. America props them up. Their positions would become weaker. So any army officer in Pakistan who's got ambitions to overthrow the government and the regime, he would feel more confident if America's got domestic issues because America can't come and save the rulers there. And this goes for the Arab rulers, everybody. Right? So this is what China and Russia should really be doing. They should be challenging America in regions of the world where America's powerful because America's got domestic issues.
Okay, so
home.
hold on. That would also mean not only for the Muslims who are ambitious and who want to bring back their own, they want to bring back Islam and things like this, but I guess that would also, even for other powers, they would look at that America can no longer control its puppets the same way that it was, prior to internal issues. Also, you're saying even China would look at that and say, if you are able to create anything. Okay, I understand.
Can you see that would be too good an opportunity to let go
for everyone.
China's got its. Saudi Arabia, most of its oil now goes to China.
Yeah, I see.
So if China had the opportunity to win over the Saud family, and it tells them that we'll uphold your rule, America can't, and because America's got domestic issues.
But China would do that.
The best way to. What if the opportunity? The thing with China is she herself has recently been a victim of a foreign occupation. So for her to play that game is quite far-fetched. But let's be honest, what was America like before the 1900s?
Right. Well, the same thing.
Can you see, what you need is some ambitious politicians. I mean, you can get in China. Many of the politicians now in China are people who have only seen China develop. They've only seen China, they've not seen China in poverty. Most of Chinese leaders up until 10, 20 years ago, they came from the era where China was poor. In the next 10, 20 years, you're going to have politicians get to the top of the Communist Party. They've seen China rich. They've seen China powerful. So these guys may have ambition that China should play a role in the region. China should play a role beyond the Far East. Remember, it took one man, Hitler, to take a defeated Germany and look at what he did. But if China can think like that, remember there's people in our countries that could take advantage as well.
But let me ask you one more question. Before we really have to go. But here's the thing, because you said, look, we have to go. If they're ambitious people, they can really set up. They can move the events in a certain way. What about? Do you need ambitious people or do you need ideological people? What makes and what's the difference? Or are they?
Yeah,
is it ideological people who are ambitious or no? How does that work?
Yeah. What I mean by ambitious people is not necessarily just ambitious. They want to be rich or powerful. I mean, people got a vision. Their ambition is to achieve their vision. Yeah. So you have to. So Putin, he came to power when Russia was completely destroyed.
Right.
Russia had lost everything, and he's a visionary. He believes Russia's a power we should be taken seriously. So he did something about it. Yeah. Now there are people there who our rulers clamp down upon. Our rulers are really, really corrupt. So that keeps away people who have got a vision to bring change. So if because America's been the dominant power in our era, if America's got domestic issues and it can't, so think about this: if America's aging gets overthrown, but you've got a major issue in America, and their priority is the issue in America. That shows you the American position change. And the best example I can give you is Gorbachev died 2 weeks ago. So there's a lot of talk about Mikhail Gorbachev.
Yeah.
And really where it showed the Soviet Union was finished was when the Berlin Wall came down. The general rule was, if there's an uprising in a Soviet republic, the Red Army will be sent in.
Yeah.
Gorbachev didn't send in the Red Army. And what that told Germany and all the republics is the Soviet Union finished. And one by one, what happened? They all overthrew the Communist Party and they became independent.
Right.
Now that moment hasn't happened to America yet. But all the signs are there: the economic issues, the debt issues, the political issues, the social issues. The Trump election campaign was, we've wasted billions abroad, and look at how we're suffering eternally. That forget, why are we paying for bases in Saudi and South Korea? They should be paying us, we're giving them security. Right. And a chunk of the American public.
This also shows that, if the Muslims were to seriously, sit down and think about what's happening, Britain was, the sun would never set. That's what the idea was of Britain, what Britain was. And today you and I are talking about the internal issues of Britain that has no real power and cannot play a serious role in the world politics, can't make anything happen. Now you have China and the US. That should actually tell the Muslims that, look, the world can change very fast. And there's so much.
I remember very clearly 9/11 happened 2001, and America's going to war, and there's nothing you could do. America was head and shoulders above everybody else, right? But those two wars have actually precipitated America's decline.
Yes, of course. Yes.
But I remember when those wars were going on, we were just like, subhanAllah, they're going to massacre the Ummah in these countries. And last year, look at the humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan. And in fact, the last two superpowers, they declined when they got defeated in Afghanistan.
Yeah, Afghanistan.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something unique about this land. You have to. That's the confirmation that you're declined.
To understand that, bro. Make a plan, man. Come to Afghanistan. Believe me, it's you should, and come and write a book. You should. If we can, I think seriously, people like you who are writing so much about the Muslim Ummah, who are doing assessments, who are strategic thinkers, who are just, all this should be written. Really, make a,
Inshallah.
A lot can happen, man. If there's a way. And as I said, I'm very serious about writing about these two wars and a new assessment and what exactly happened to these global powers in these lands that they fell apart. With that, brothers and sisters, we'll actually end this discussion. Subhanallah, it's always an honor to have Brother Adnan here, because every time these discussions happen, you want to go and you bring a lot of hope, akhi. Wallahi, mashallah, when you discuss the way you're discussing issues, it actually brings a lot of hope to Muslims, that they can see that the world is not, it changes. Opportunities are there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving opportunities to us for us to see, to have our people who are they have ambition, they are ambitious, and they can change the future and of the Muslim world and the Muslims. All you need is trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that willpower, that فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. So Jazakallah khair, Shaykhi, for coming, and I think we're going to have to have a discussion on China and the US.
I think so.
So brothers and sisters, Jazakumullah khairan for attending, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to see what we are seeing, powers coming along, growing, that we also see the Muslims coming and actually playing the role in the affairs of the world, because it's not just about running the world, it's actually now we need to fix the world. The world has seen so much oppression and so much chaos that what these powers have done, but they've never actually seen peace and tranquility that only this deen can bring. And once again, Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. See you next Friday, inshallah.
يا شبابا قد أنابا وإلى الله استجابا، إن من يرجو الثواب لا يبالي بالصعاب، في سبيل الله نمضي نبتغي رفع اللواء، فليعد للدين مجد وليعد للدين عز. منا الدماء يا شبابا قد